Hi, everyone. I'm Christine Tully, President and Executive Writing Coach of Defend and Publish. Welcome to episode 58, Make a February Comeback. I got the idea for this episode a couple nights ago when I was standing in line to return something at a department store. And one of the songs that played over the loudspeakers in the store had this catchy line that said, I think I'm thinking about making a comeback back to me. And it just played over and over again. And it was kind of catchy. It stuck in my head. And I really started thinking about that on the way home about, yeah, I'd like to make a comeback too. And I have since found out that song was by Carly Rae Jepsen and the Bleachers. So I will put the link to it in the show notes. And for the record, it has nothing to do with the topic of this podcast today. I think it's about a romance, but I like that line. You know, I'm thinking about making a comeback back to me. And why I was thinking about it specifically for February is that a lot of us come back to start a spring semester with New Year's resolutions, and there's this energy for coming back to start January. And one of the things that I started thinking about with coming back with New Year's resolutions is that sometimes Januaries don't work out the way we want them to. We might have this wonderful burst of energy, perhaps after the holidays, maybe after some travel or just the break between semesters, but sometimes they just don't work out that way for lots of reasons. Many of us in the United States, but also in other areas of the world, have been hit with some pretty severe bad weather that's shut down a lot of things that maybe we can't get to our research lab or our library. There's still a pandemic going on, so that certainly could layer over it at the time we're recording this at the end of January in 2022. But there were other things that personally just kind of blocked me from having this really productive January that I wanted to have. I ended up with some sick kids for various reasons. I myself had a random emergency room event, so I'm fine. But it was random, and it did take away a couple of days. I still had things like trying to clean up holiday decorations because I hadn't done that. I had a couple things with a car, and every single one of those events chipped away a little bit at the time that was available for me to focus on scholarship and writing. So I thought I would have, these kind of long open days, maybe a little bit more breathing room to work on some projects, and it just didn't happen. And so one of the things I find with newer faculty, and sometimes this can happen with senior faculty too, but a lot of folks start throwing in the towel by the end of January and say, well, this semester is just kind of a disaster. And they kind of give in to that and allow themselves to slide a little bit with scholarship and writing. And certainly some events, you're not sliding, you just honestly can't do it. So if your kids are, genuinely sick, you yourself are genuinely sick, there is a major crisis, life event happening in your world right now, you may not get to your writing. But some of the things that just stack up that maybe mess up a day or two during the week and then a couple weeks get messed up, it seems like you're on the track where maybe your spring semester isn't going to go the way that you want it to go. So I thought what I'd do in this episode is just walk through a couple of ways that I'm going to try to stage my own February comeback, and I will report some progress on that. So one of the projects that I'm working on, or wanted to be working on, was a revision for a book manuscript. And it seemed like every time I sat down to do it, something else got in the way. And so I like that line in that song about making this comeback back to me, where I'm going to really work on working on that manuscript my priority. It's something that I need to do for me, and it's something that gives me pleasure. We talk a lot on this podcast about getting pleasure out of writing and also out of academic reading, for that matter. I'll link a couple podcasts in our show notes about that and how to develop that joy. But making it a focus for me also means that maybe I need to say no to a couple of other things. I was asked to chair a leadership committee for a national organization, and I have turned it down because I knew that I really want to focus on this other thing. There was a volunteer opportunity at my children's school that I also turned down because I knew that I wouldn't have the time to do it. And I'm looking again at sort of reinstituting some boundaries to make sure that I'm able to get a few things done that I need to get finished. Another part of this February comeback is really making the commitment that I need to figure out what it is that I am writing, because I'm pretty regimented in the time that I do it. I do kind of like to write at the same time during weekdays when possible, but I've completely let that slide. So even if you have habits like that have worked for you for a long time, sometimes they just don't. And so one of the things that I'm going to look at is try to find some times when I know I can get some writing done, but also find a couple of holes that I know I can use for backups. One of our other podcast episodes is about having a contingency plan, and I'll make sure that I link to that episode. Having a contingency plan is certainly, part of making sure you can actually make a comeback because you have a backup plan. But another thing that I just tried to think about was, in general, what is it that I find appealing about being an academic? And, one of the things I think, especially for those of us that are, mid-career, and maybe in a full professor stage, even kind of, closing out or getting close to retirement, that it's easy to sort of lose track of the joys and the individual things that happen each year, because the years start to string together once you're past the tenure pressures. And for those of you on the non-tenure track, if you're mid-career, maybe your career has taken a different turn than you expected, but maybe you've got some really unique things happening that sometimes stack up and you might not be taking notice of. So one of the things that I'm trying to do this year, especially this semester in my February comeback, is to really enjoy the part about academic work. So really enjoy sitting down to read an article that I want to read. Really enjoy being able to teach a class of students and how much fun that is, and try to revisit a lot of those things. I do think that sometimes we become numb to, things that are part of academic work, like looking up documentation or trying to, find a source, that we just don't really pay attention to a lot of fun that can sometimes happen from some of that work. It's not always fun. Many of us, especially those of us in graduate school, are really struggling. People that are worried about passing a dissertation defense, or worried about a tenure decision, or our contingent faculty that are worried, if they'll have a position next year. Certainly it is not all fun and games, but just enjoying the work that we're doing now and being present in the moment. I feel like that's a good part of making a comeback and really just being re-energized and working in my position. So I'd love to hear some other suggestions. If you follow us on Twitter, if you've got some other ideas for making your own February comeback, please join us for that. And also, if we have any academic mothers out there, if you want to make a comeback for February, we are doing our February boost for our academic mothers writing group. If you're interested in participating in that, you definitely can check that out on Eventbrite. And in fact, all of our Defend and Publish events are on Eventbrite. So if you follow us, you can get some news about that. So I hope this tips helps, and maybe think about how you can stage your own February comeback. Happy writing.